Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out today to join us on this October morning. It's a little bit chilly, and I think we got a little bit of rain coming our way in the next couple of days. But really appreciate you taking the time to join us here from either from Vancouver or other parts in North America. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jason C., and I'm the Executive Director for Maple Business Council here in British Columbia. Before I start, I just want to send a quick shout out to a couple of our partners. Firstly, Lino Pereira from our partners at World Trade Center Vancouver. Great to have you here, Lino. And as well as from Global Affairs Canada, Jenny Karn Jenna Vijaya, who was actually my colleague many years ago at HQ Vancouver, but we still correspond regularly and work on individual files together. So I thought I'd just give you a quick update in terms of sorry here. So just give you a quick update in terms of the run of show today. So hopefully you had a chance to network and meet some new folks or reacquaint with some folks that you've met in the past. And we'll have a chance to do that again after Eric's presentation for about 15 minutes from 11:45 till when we close at noon. But what I'll do now is I'll just give you a quick report in terms of what's happened here recently at Maple Business Council. And then hopefully around 11:15 or so, we'll give Eric an opportunity to talk a little bit about the Southern California innovation and startup landscape and some interesting insight from his perspective. So for those of you who'd like to reference this presentation in the future, we are actually recording today's presentation, and a copy will be made available in our Maple communication in the future. And questions, as Eric is going through his presentation, are definitely welcome. You can enter those either in the chat box or in the Q&A section, which you'll find on the sort of the right side of your screen there. And we'll try to get to many of those as possible. So just a quick update in terms of Maple. In terms of our community continues to grow. And so recently we were able to announce a new gold member, Sterling Capital Brokers, as one of our newest Gold Leaf organization members, spanning coast to coast. Sterling Capital Brokers is Canada's largest independent benefits consulting firm that specializes in servicing high growth and small to medium sized businesses. So we're happy to have Sterling Capital Brokers join us. And of course, renewing members as well. So we have some longtime supporters such as BDC, Cardinal Point, Purelator, RSM, the TMX Group, and Zayhive renew their memberships as well. So really happy to have them on an ongoing basis with us. And then in terms of renewing members at the executive level, it's been a busy summer for those as well. So from left to right, Canadian immigration inbound lawyer Pavan Dillon, who I understand has moved to Seattle now. Also Lorraine Duclos of Hemlock Harling, and Los Angeles-based attorney partner Nicole Simonian, Crowell and Mooring as well. Further, we have some additional renewing members, Jim Peoples, President and CEO of Challenger Motor Freight in Cambridge, Ontario, Jesse Van Griesen, Chairman of Waterloo, Ontario-based end-to-end communication encryption provider Toria and professor at the University of Waterloo. Also Alex Lesson, CEO of digital content marketing agency Krillix, and Chris and Alex actually just recently moved to Port Coquitlam from Long Beach as well, so welcoming them to Vancouver. And also Mohamed, who's founder and managing partner of Vancouver-based Westmark Tax, with offices both in Orange County and Vancouver. So Maple's now about 6 years strong, and so one of the things we're really proud about is the diversity in terms of our sectors. So now we have actually members representing 23 sectors. So hopefully during these networking events, as well as some of our communication, you get a chance to learn perhaps a little bit more about your industry, but also an opportunity to learn about other industries and some of the opportunities and challenges that some of our other members are facing as well. And furthermore, we're also really diversified now in 21 markets. And the real benefit of doing virtual events like these on Remo is that we get attendees from all over North America. And just in the networking this morning, it's great to see a lot of folks from New York, in Los Angeles, and actually quite a few down the Eastern Seaboard in the U.S. as well. So hopefully we can continue that, and hopefully you can provide some benefit from meeting some folks from outside of your region as well. So locally, although we've been in Vancouver for quite some time, and I really began our activities here back when I first met Stephen and Rob back in 2017, we became an official Maple chapter about a year ago. So it's been great working with Stephen and Rob, developing new memberships and developing new partnerships, and we hope to continue to grow that as we move forward as well. And then also happy anniversary to John Costanzo, who many of you may have met, who's in attendance here today. Our New York chapter turned 1 year old last June. So it's great to have John join us and exposing us to his wealth of contacts in the New York area as well. So just if you may recall, actually, our last actual event was on March 12th, 2020. And it was just the beginning of COVID, and we didn't actually know what was going to happen in the future at that point. But our last event was actually featuring Air Canada as our featured speakers, with Serge, who is the Director of Government Relations with Air Canada, and James Howie doing a presentation. And the key part of their presentation was actually launching a nonstop air service between Vancouver and John Wayne Airport in Orange County. And so it was originally planned for spring of 2020. Unfortunately, it's been a little delayed, but the good thing is it actually started service on a 4 times a week basis on October 2nd. So we've been pushing that out and in celebration of that in our social media channels as well. So congratulations to Air Canada, and hopefully you'll have a chance to try out that new service sometime in the future. From our end, also big thanks to the U.S. Consulate, who's been really supportive of our events. And in fact, Consul General Brent Hart was one of our speakers, as you may recall, at our recent events. But he actually was able to invite me to a reception last month. And it was a little bit odd for me because it was actually my first sort of in-person event after quite a while. But really appreciative of the support ongoing from the U.S. Consulate and their team, most notably Damien Stafford as well, who's a member of their staff. Also want to extend a shout out to David Wilson. Had a chance to sit down with David and was able to be part of his podcast on another track. And so I just listened to the draft version this morning, and hopefully that will be available for download or listening later on as well. I don't really like to listen to myself speak. David is much smoother and he's got a British accent, so he sounds way better than I did, but I really appreciate sharing some thoughts and some insight, both on Maple and some other discussion areas as well. So hopefully you have a chance to listen to that. So one of the things we were able to do quite a bit in terms of Maple is just share some of our thoughts in terms of storytelling. So facilitating members to share insights, whether it's about our business and sectors or how we do business, is an important part of Maple. And we're really grateful for the opportunity to share insights from 14 members and partners on the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our June issue of Momentum. As some of you may have seen in your inboxes, the October issue of Momentum as well. And we have some really good articles, both from Purelator and Invest Quebec, on some really topical insight. So hopefully you have a chance to take a look at that in the next little while, if not already. Also, this summer, we had a chance to release some new episodes of our conversation video series, which is on our website or on our Vimeo channel. We had Dan Altman of Kenobi Martins and Partners. We also had Vad Teplitsky, a partner at Kenobi Martins, on discussing the topic of freedom to operate, highly relevant to businesses expanding across borders. And we all had Bill Klages, VP Influencer and Partner Relations at QA Consultants, on software quality assurance and trends. It was this topic that he spoke of as well. So in terms of what's upcoming further in the year, one of our partners, LA EDC, they also run World Trade Center LA. So their main event is the Select LA Investment Summit, which is October 20th and 21st. There's a discount for Maple members, but actually from anyone from coming outside the country, it is actually free to Canadian members. I've been there once as well, so I thought it was quite a good networking event, a one-day event with a reception the night before. So it can be a good base for potentially further business trips while you're down there, or business meetings while you're down there as well. I understand the mayor, Eric Eide, will be a featured speaker at the event. Mayor Garcetti is actually being appointed as the future ambassador from the U.S. to India as well. So also of interesting to note is I'm a big football fan as well. So although I won't be attending on this occasion, but the evening reception will be actually held at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. So upcoming events for our network, if you want to shout out to John's event for the Maple New York Fall Reception, it'll be virtual as well. And he'll have speakers from the National Offshore Wind Research and Development Consortium, as well as from Hydro Quebec as well. And then as we move into December, of course, it's Christmas season, so we're planning an event for our Maple SoCal winter reception on December 7th, and still to be determined whether the events will be virtual or actual for BC and New York. So stay tuned for that as we have more announcements in regards to our winter mixers. So at this point, I want to take an opportunity to welcome a longtime friend and supporter of Maple Business Council. Our featured speaker today is Eric Eide, Director of Ecosystem Development. Eric Eide combines experience in the private sector, government, and academia as Director of Ecosystem Development at the Alliance for Southern California Innovation, where he leads investment, engagement, and community building efforts with startup communities. Prior to the Alliance, Eric was an early employee of Scooter Startup Bird, where he grew the government relations team. Previously, Eric served as Director of International Trade for Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti and served in the U.S. federal government at the U.S. Department of State and U.S. Small Business Administration. Eric holds a PhD in sociology from the University of Michigan, Go Blue, where his research is based on innovation, ecosystems, industrial policy, and globalization. So Eric, I'm just going to put myself here on mute and I'll pass the podium over to yourself.
Jason, thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm super excited to engage with MAPLE B.C. and other guests from across North America. I know when we were doing some of the networking, I was impressed to kind of hear that there was people from North Carolina and New York, as well as Vancouver and myself, certainly down in Southern California. So, despite the pandemic, Maple continues to connect people across distance in meaningful ways, and it's great to be part of this. I'm looking forward to kind of sharing a little bit about Southern California. I feel like Southern California and Vancouver and British Columbia kind of share a number of similarities. We tend to love the outdoors and the lifestyle, and we also have entertainment and gaming and AR, VR kind of technologies that are kind of important to our high growth businesses and industries here. So I'll be sharing a little bit about what Southern California has. I will say at the outset that Southern California is not one place, and that will come through in the talk that I'll provide. It's very diverse, and sometimes that complexity is hard to navigate. And so I want to provide some transparency on what is in Southern California, and so you could find what you're looking for or who you're looking for. And happy to be a guide alongside Maple and other partners to get you connected where it's going to be most impactful for you. Without further ado, Jason, why don't we start the presentation? Many of you probably haven't heard of the Alliance for SoCal Innovation. We're a small not-for-profit that was founded in 2017 by a serial entrepreneur, Steve Poizner, who had a couple big exits to a telecom company called Qualcomm, which is based down in San Diego. And he was perplexed why Southern California had so much going for it in terms of innovation, but wasn't fully realizing its potential. And he sought to try to make a difference on that. And so he recruited Janet Napolitano, who was then the UC Regent president, to get all the UC schools, the research universities, involved with the Alliance. He also talked to Eric Schmidt from Google, who he's friends with, and some other Northern California luminaries who had connections to Southern California to kind of start working. And since then, we've built out connections with other stakeholder groups, including Southern California corporations, the venture capital community, advocacy, and cities that all seek to support founders in various ways. And what we're really trying to do is connect across a promising but decentralized region and make it more navigable. So we do that a lot by working with stakeholders, and we do that now some with founders directly. But that's a little bit about us. Next slide, Jason. We do prize our diversity as a commitment, and we look at diversity very broadly, and we think about we value our geographic diversity of Southern California, which I'll show you a little bit, our industrial diversity, which has lots of different sectors, which provides lots of opportunities for convergence and combinations in new ways, but also creates challenges in terms of messaging what we're good at. And then certainly our ethnic and national diversity. Los Angeles, in Los Angeles County alone, 220 languages are spoken here. And I think that diversity of people and races and perspectives is really what makes Southern California strong. And the Alliance seeks to kind of reflect and build upon that, because we really do believe that is our superpower. Next slide, Jason. So at the Alliance, I talked a little about the founders as kind of being the core of our mission, but we work a lot with the stakeholders, which are the kind of the gray quarter circles around that, to help support founders. And then we've built programs which are kind of focal areas kind of in these blue dots. And then on the right side are actual programs that we've developed that kind of develop that. And so I'm happy to talk about any of these if there's interest, but I think the takeaway here is we're trying to connect the ecosystem players in various ways. And what that means for you, if you're not in Southern California, is we know lots of people, and we could probably connect you to somebody that might be helpful. Next slide, Stephen. Jason. So Southern California, I think one of the major takeaways is it's not one place, it's a collection of places. And we're lucky to have the Boston Consulting Group as one of our strategic partners who wrote our business plan for us, and also does kind of a major project for us each year. And we asked them when we were getting started to map the Southern California ecosystem so we could find where the heat was in terms of startup density, investor density, talent density, and corporate density, which are kind of some of the key building blocks of innovation ecosystems. And this map is really what emerged. We've got various nodes, hubs, or clusters, whatever term you want to use, that have excellence, but they're really quite diverse from each other, and they're good at different things. And a lot of people just think of LA and think of Hollywood. Entertainment is important, but it's just one of many industries that the region leads on. And when you look at innovation, we're known for some of our consumer tech, like Bird, the scooter company, or Snap, the camera kind of app and messaging app. But we also have lots of deep tech, like in robotics, that's produced in Pasadena. Med tech, we're the med tech center of the country. And that's really, that center of gravity is in Irvine. Life sciences down in San Diego is huge. Photonics up in Santa Barbara. And so one of the key things of trying to figure out where to kind of connect in Southern California is trying to figure out where different centers of gravity are. And so I just throw this map up here as just kind of a way to highlight kind of where things are. Next slide, Jason. This slide really kind of captures some of the kind of headlines about what kind of makes Southern California special from an innovation perspective. We're the third largest U.S. innovation hub, and we've got over 3,700 startups. And we're as of last year, we're tied with Metro New York in VC dollars, so $19 billion of capital went into startups here locally. We've got the largest concentration of research universities, 5 UC schools, USC, Caltech, just to name a few. We produce tons and tons of STEM talent. A full third of those travel up to the Bay Area. So that's one of our challenges, is to try to retain more of them here that we produce locally. But we also have lots of Nobel Prize winners. Frances Arnold, I just saw at Caltech last night. She lives in the Pasadena area, and she's one of the Nobel Peace Prize winners. Just kind of looking, I mentioned when we got started that we were really started by kind of Bay Area leaders. And I think, the Bay Area is a partner of ours, not a competitor, but I think there is a growing recognition that that the Bay Area can only grow so much more. And it hasn't always had the most diverse perspectives on solving problems. And I think that's a real strength of both Southern California, and I'd say probably of Vancouver as well, and Canada more generally, with its diversity. Next slide. So I'm going to pivot a little bit to talk a little bit about how Southern California ranks among other U.S. hubs. Next slide. Again, BCG has been kind of our thought partner on this exercise, and some of the data I'm going to show you, most of the data that I've showed you has been kind of pulled together by them. But if you haven't seen the stars aligning report that BCG produced, it's definitely worth a look. It's a very readable white paper. It was published in 2018, but the narrative is spot on, and it really kind of gives you a little bit more detail on kind of what you might find and what's compelling about Southern California than I'll probably have time to get into in this talk today. Next slide, Jason. So here's kind of a snapshot of SoCal. You know, we're number 3 on this ranking after the Bay Area and New York City, but just ahead of Boston. And then again, Southern California is not just one place. And so you could see kind of LA, San Diego, Orange County, and Ventura broken out here as some of kind of the leading innovation regions within Southern California. And I'll be providing more detail on subsequent slides. So Jason, next slide, please. So you know, this is like college rankings, like there's lots of rankings around innovation. Here's some others that kind of have LA or Southern California coming in at different places. So you might this is probably worth checking out, but I know talking with Jason earlier, there'd be interest perhaps from this group on where others stacked up that might not be in the top 3. So I just wanted to call some of these out. Startup Genome has LA as the number 6 ranked ecosystem. Seattle came in at number 10. Toronto Waterloo came in at number 14. The Startup Blink survey had LA number 4, Seattle number 12. The CBRE Tech Talent Pool had the Bay Area, of course, number 1, Seattle number 2, Toronto number 4, LA Orange County area number 9, Vancouver number 11, and San Diego number 19. So according to some of these polls, things bounce around a little bit, but this is all to say that we're doing pretty well kind of rankings in terms of Southern California. The next slide, please. The next slide, produced by Boston Consulting Group, kind of shows kind of some of the key features of a leading tech ecosystem. And this is kind of the more deeper analysis of the slide we saw 2 previously. And it shows SoCal number 3, performing well on human, financial, and human and financial capital and strong university system. It's got a strong corporate environment, adequate infrastructure, and the culture conducive to innovation is growing. And what that culture really means is, you know, being an entrepreneur is really hard. You get discouraged, you have a lot of setbacks, and you really need people around you to help you get back on your feet and give you the mentorship or point you to the resources that'll help you build your business. And some areas have that culture of picking people back up after they fail or have a setback. And that's something that really exemplifies the Bay Area and their innovation ecosystem. But it's not, there's nothing natural about that. A lot of people are risk averse. They don't want to do things that they're going to fail at. And so really having that culture is important. And that's growing in Southern California. Next slide. So there was, when we were kind of doing some of the prep calls, there was interest in kind of venture capital. And so I wanted to provide a little perspective on this. And so I called out earlier that LA actually caught and overtook New York last year. Last year was obviously an interesting year. So we'll see this next year if LA continues to beat New York in absolute dollars deployed. But again, that's just another way that Southern California is leading. Next slide, please. And then here you could kind of see just how the others are stacking up, particularly in terms of financial capital. And these have been fairly consistent over time. And we'll be doing kind of some deeper analysis on some of the finances. Next slide. So one of the things that is really important to know about Southern California is its diversity. And I said that at the outset, but here this really shows you some of the top industries. And the largest category in Southern California only has 21% of the startups. And you'll notice that other regions are more specialized. So the Bay Area specializes much more heavily in software and tech, whereas Boston is very heavy, predictably, in health, right? I think that diversity is ultimately a strength that provides lots of combinations, but it is a challenge in providing that density and feeling like you have a huge community working on the same similar problems. So it's a little harder to find your tribe, so to speak, and that's even more so the case when the geography is so distributed across so many miles as it is in Southern California. Next slide, please. So some people are wondering kind of what are the key industries, and this snapshot kind of tells you from a startup perspective kind of how we stack up in various industries, and this is particularly in relation to the Bay Area. So software, the Northern California slightly leads us, and this is just percentage, but you should know that the software category is huge. So this kind of underestimates the number of kind of companies just looking at the bar graph. So the Bay Area has a lot more software companies. But what I think is interesting from this slide is showing where Southern California really leads the Bay Area on environmental technology, recreational goods manufacturing, and defense and transportation kind of technology. So just highlight some of the differences. Next slide, Jason. And I really like this slide because it actually shows, this is just absolute number of startups. It shows us basically catching Northern California in number of startups. And now this doesn't mean that all these startups are getting the same amount of funding. We know that Northern California companies have easier access to funding and get funded more heavily, but in absolute numbers, we're pretty close. Another takeaway from this slide is, I mean, you could see that LA is by far the biggest in terms of absolute number of startups, but Orange County and San Diego are significant as well. But almost a 14% of all the startups are outside of those three major counties. So this is something that most people aren't aware of, and something to be aware of. Next slide. So I'm going to pivot now a little bit to how funding measures up. Next slide, Jason. So again, this is a consistent theme that we have a diverse ecosystem here, and you could see this as well with our capital and how it's deployed. Total VC funding in the U.S. increased 54% in a 4-year period with a steady regional distribution, and you could see Southern California in orange on the left. But on the right, you kind of see the mix of different industries, again, relative to the US total in the Bay Area. And you could just see, again, the more even distribution and kind of our diversity. And we don't have we have less of a clear specialized sector. Next slide, Jason. One thing to know about the investment landscape here in Southern California is it's really weighted towards early stage funding. And I know in Canada, there's a lot of government incentives to startups or financial incentives and support. But then after you kind of initially start your company, it's much harder to find growth capital in Canada. It's similarly the case in Southern California, where seed and early stage funding is easier to find. There's less government support relative to Canada, but the private markets have really blossomed. 20 years ago in Southern California, there was a couple angel syndicates providing early stage funding, but not a lot of VCs. Now there's over 120 early stage VCs, but we still kind of struggle at the growth stage, which I'll talk about it a little bit. But the first half of 2021, 330 million spread across 116 startups. So you could see how those broke down, but software as a service is a huge category. But you can see some of the others as well. Next slide, Jason. So as I said, SoCal is weighted towards the early stage, but there's a real opportunity to write later stage checks. And we have probably about 15 SoCal-based VC firms that are writing at Series A and beyond. And that's growing. And a number of Bay Area based firms are increasingly having venture investment partners either located down here or opening an office or covering Southern California because they know there's activity down here, and they want to have access to it. And at the early stage, those tend to be easier to find if you're kind of if you're here locally and have the relationships to find them. So yeah, Southern California does suffer from the later stage, particularly the Series B, C, and D. So Series A, for those of you that aren't versed in kind of venture capital, Series A is the first institutional check that a founder might get from a real VC. But if you don't get that, if a founder doesn't get an A series, then it's hard to get the B, C, and D. So that's the bottleneck for us in Southern California. And I'm happy to kind of take any questions that people might have, either kind of in the chat or throughout. I know I'm kind of throwing out a lot of information, and some of it, the terminology may not be familiar to those of you that are in this may not be your business, basically. So I understand that. Next slide. So I think the next two slides are interesting because they kind of reflect broader venture capital trends as well as kind of what's happening here locally. So what you see here in Southern California is a dramatic increase in the amount of venture capital that's been deployed over about a 10-year period, ending in 2019. And LA captured the lion's share of that growth, followed by San Diego and Orange County. But on net, SoCal was over 200% growth over that 10-year period in venture capital access, which is fantastic for startups here that are trying to scale and hire and build. But the next slide, Jason. But this next slide kind of paints a sobering picture in terms of that. So the percentage drop there's been a percentage drop overall. So the takeaway here is that while the pie is growing, Southern California's share of it is actually not keeping pace with the growth of that pie. So we're getting a smaller slice as the pie is getting bigger. And so that's just something to put in perspective. But just here locally, we had a happy hour with venture capitalists just in the greater Pasadena area. 10 years ago, there would have been 2 people maybe at that table. Last night we had 20. And so there is a maturing of kind of capital access here, but there's just so much capital in the markets nationally and even internationally that it's just growing so fast. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see how this continues or pauses over time. Next slide. So here, when we were kind of prepping for this call, people, Jason and Steven and Rob Kelly thought that people in Canada were particularly interested in finding out where venture investment, what's happening in the venture community and how people that aren't in Southern California might access it. And so this is a relational game. It helps to have relationships. It's hard to pitch people cold, but increasingly investors are taking cold emails and cold outreaches. But it is kind of a relational game. I wanted to show some of the kind of firms that were investing in Southern California, and just to kind of give some sense of it. There's a lot of names on these next slides, but it will give you kind of a sense on what's happening, as well as kind of what are the firms that are driving it. Next slide, Stephen. Sorry, Jason. I keep on calling you Stephen. So these are the 10 prominent Los Angeles area venture firms last year that closed $100 million funds or more. There's some impressive names here. And a lot of these, it's worth noting, a number of these were smaller seed funds that have grown and gotten bigger funds. So Bonfire, for example, has been in this game for a long time, and they just keep on growing because they're successful. But there's also some new entrants. Sinai Ventures, huge brand new fund that came on the scene last year. Griffin Gaming Partners. This was founded by some entertainment execs that got into venture investing and leveraged their entertainment relationships. And they're based in LA because entertainment's here. Many people think that gaming is the place to be, particularly in California. Like Southern California is where you should be for the gaming industry, but this is it's a brand new fund. They raised 235 million, and they're raising their second fund, which is going to be twice that size. And so they're really they really have a lot of money to plow into entertainment, tech, and gaming, and they do look at some AR as well, our augmented reality. I'm going to look at Ursula's question real quick. She asked about women-led ventures is appallingly low at 2.4%. Yes, it is appallingly low. What role does our group play in changing this profile for women and other underrepresented groups? It's a great question. We think about this not only for women, but lots of people who don't tend to have access to venture capital or just access to the startup ecosystem in general, and particularly Black and brown folks have had historically trouble accessing this industry, and if they found businesses accessing capital. We try to celebrate this. We try to celebrate the opportunities and support founders in various ways. In the diversity Maple newsletter, you could read about some of what the Alliance is doing, but we've really overlaid kind of diversity across all of our programming. We have metrics across all of the activities that we do. And in our programs, we have aggressive benchmarks for what we want to achieve in terms of having offering supports and providing opportunities to more closely reflect our population, which it's not. It's venture capital in particular, but the startup ecosystem in general has been a predominantly white, male-dominated profession. Allraise is a collection of women venture capitalists. A number of the founding members of Allraise are here in Southern California. Kara Nortman, who's the managing partner of Upfront, is the chair of our VC advisory council. And then there's a number of people that we're involved with that are part of that network. There's the Women's Founder Network, which helps founders, women founders, try to gain access, mentor them, and help them. There's also organizations focused on access for, increasing representation in Black and brown communities. So in venture, there's the Act One Diversity Rider, which is we've helped promote, and others are increasingly signing on to promote Latinx founders and helping them get capital access. There's organizations like Black VC or VC Include that we promote and partner with that are doing similar things in African American communities here. But this work is really kind of, people have been talking about it for a while, but there hasn't been much action. There seems to be more action than there's ever been, but we still have so far to go. And so that's, there's still just a lot of work that needs to be done here. And we can only, I feel like we can only go up from here, but there continues to be a lot of work. And Ursula, thank you for raising that important question. I just kind of wanted to gallop through the next couple slides pretty quickly. There's lots of names here, but this is just, the top firms that are investing in Southern California, as well as the NorCal ones you could see below. So lots of names here. Jason, you could just cycle through these and we could share these later if you're interested, just to kind of find out who's involved here. But there's a lot of firms that have been active here. And so let's pause here, Jason. We are getting close to time, and I do want, I think it'd be helpful for to hear more from the audience, because I'm sure you do have interesting questions that I'd like to be able to answer. But to summarize, Southern California is a leading innovation hub. It's diverse in industries, talents, geographies, as well as identity. It's an asset. It's an asset to have that diversity. It's also a challenge to kind of message and communicate to the world about what we're good at. And so we actually are launching a brand campaign to better do that around kind of what Southern California's innovation potential is. If you want to check that out, we have a website up that's linkable off the Alliance website, or if you type in "This is SoCal" into your browser, you'll find it as well. It might be kind of interesting to kind of check that out. I could also share it after, but we're trying to figure out like how to better message what we do here in all its complexity. So, and then reviewing kind of the investment trends that I galloped through. Local capital is growing, but slower than the total amount of capital outside the region. And there's opportunity for later stage investment. And, we did just launch a program this year that I oversee that really tries to help founders access Series A capital, which has been a bottleneck for our region. Unfortunately, it requires companies to be headquartered in Southern California, so it may not be something that everybody could take advantage of. But if companies are interested in having a presence in Southern California and are looking at raising Series A and beyond funding, this could be a potential solution for you. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who might want more information about that. Next slide. So we're actually at the questions section of this. So I wanted to pause, but I also wanted to provide my my contact information. Again, I think how I could be helpful to those of you who are trying to understand the innovation landscape in Southern California and want to know where to start is I could serve as a guide and get you connected to somebody. I don't unfortunately have the capacity to do business development activities on behalf of organizations, but certainly want to help you find the partners that you might be looking for. And again, I think MAPLE is a wonderful resource. The Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation and the World Trade Center LA are wonderful resources. I hope many of you can join for the Select LA conference, which is really a wonderful convening of a lot of the kind of key people that think about engaging internationally in Southern California. And with that, I'll turn it over to questions. So I do see a comment here, but Jason, I wanted to. I know you're going to kind of quarterback questions, so I'll leave it to you to.
Yeah, no, Eric, go ahead and feel free to answer any of the questions in the chat or the Q&A at your discretion.
Great. So I'm looking at this question from Justin about Canadian and California collaboration. So the boat manufacturer used more stringent air pollution laws in California. What would improve? So Justin, to make sure I understand, what would help improve the collaboration? I think it starts with relationships and people. Like it's usually people that connect you to organizations and give you the insight on how to position your product or service. I think, in this case, Justin, I think, the manufacturer looking at California laws as, as a hurdle to meet in order to gain access to opportunities in the economy is a great one. California does have the most stringent environmental regulations in the country. A lot of people complain about that, but I think it's helped create the strongest clean tech industry in the country. We have lots of innovation and sustainability and clean technology because of those regulations that are here. And there's other reasons for that than just business reasons. Our topography here traps a lot of the harmful pollution that's produced at the ports or from our car traffic, and people breathe it here. And so, those laws are trying to protect kind of the health of our citizens that live here. But I think looking at kind of market entry for anybody, cross-border business, looking at what the local market that you're seeking to do business in, and making sure you meet those is just a precondition for being able to sell and do business there. So I think that's great. But in order to get more insight and access, I think that really starts with relationships. And so MAPLE again would be kind of a great first stop. I could be helpful, LAEDC, other organizations.
Great. Thanks very much, Eric, for your very insightful presentation. We've wanted to have you up here presenting and telling us a little about the SoCal innovation landscape for quite some time. So really happy to have you join us, and perhaps you'll be joining us again either as one of the guests or perhaps as a presenter in the future. Really happy that you talked a little bit about diversity, both in terms of industries, but interesting to note in terms of a diversity in terms of demographics as well, because you mentioned like 30% of the population was foreign born. I think in Vancouver it's about 40%. So something that Vancouver and Southern California can really have in common. At this point, I just want to sort of maybe break and give some more time for folks to get back onto the floor. And if you have some questions for Eric, you can certainly approach him on the floor, or perhaps potentially after this event as well. Again, I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their days to to join us. As I said, we're always looking for new members to join as part of our community. So whether you or your company might be interested, or perhaps you know people in your network who might be interested in joining us, we're always happy to entertain that. They can always find out more from our website, maplecouncil.org, or just connecting with me or my colleagues directly. So thanks again, Eric. I'm going to turn the presentation off now. We'll go back down to the floor and have a little bit more time for networking. Thanks again. Thanks for your questions, and we'll talk to you again soon.